Okay, I'm gonna call the meeting to order. Need a motion to approve the agenda. Okay, second, all in favor? Aye. All right, so we have a permit for variance for NICC through Straka Johnson. We're putting a sign up, I believe it's roughly 12 foot tall. Right, is that right?
Yep.
And 6'4" by 5'10". They're looking at putting it kind of by the fairway and Enterprise, or NICC Drive there. So, you want to add some maps out maybe? Or?
Yeah, let's do that. I brought a couple of different things to help. I'll talk to you guys mine. So, yeah, just a bigger version there. Now, Annette, are we talking about the monument sign at all tonight? Or are we doing?
No.
Okay, so this is just the right away one. And then here's an exhibit that kind of shows the relationship to adjacent properties. What we're looking at here, this is where that college suites apartment is going up here. Okay, so that piece of land, this guy right here, yep, was transferred to that entity. And the property line, so previously the property line is this dash line here. It jogged around the tip of NICC Drive and then came back to this point and continued on. So on our application there, all of those setbacks are relative to this property line right here. Okay, so if that helps kind of make sense of that. I don't know the whole history of why this chunk of NICC Drive was part of the cities, but I'm sure it had to do with maintenance and that sort of thing. So anyway, so sign type A corresponds beyond that property line, which is in the easement in front of Fairway.
So this here is the entrance to College Suites.
That would be the Fairway entrance.
So this is Fairway.
Yep. Yep. That whole the whole College Suites, believe it or not, have.
That's over here.
Yep. And the other thing I would say is going back to this version, this little 5-foot dimension here. I had worked with Dean to kind of get that sign ideally situated relative to an existing light pole that's there. Also pushing that far enough away that visibility is not going to be impacted by people coming out of the Fairway parking lot.
Okay.
So
on that aspect, I talked to Dean tonight, just met with him briefly for about a half hour, 45 minutes. He realized it wasn't quite that big of a sign. So I had the dimensions and stuff, and he goes, oh, that's bigger than I expected. So we were just wondering about visibility even coming out of the College Suites here.
Yep.
You know, with that big of a sign.
Yep. So
and you know, potential, you know, sidewalks along there, if they could do a sidewalk along that, you know, for the college kids to go to like the Fairway and stuff right there. So it's a 6-foot by 6-foot sign, you know, 12 foot in the air. It's pretty big.
yeah, can I touch on both of those?
That one, go ahead.
So as luck would have it, we're also the architecture firm for College Suites. Oh, nice. So when we went through this design process with them, the sidewalks is what you're seeing here represented. We played off of our work at the Peosta main building. So back before College Suites came along, the NICC had anticipated sending perhaps students across the street. So we actually designed in a sidewalk crossing the street. The plan at that time was to put the sidewalk on the opposite side, you know, next to round 2. And so that's what we had established early on. And that was with Annette's predecessor. Then along comes College Suites, playing off of that concept of the sidewalk being across the street. We very intentionally took what would be student traffic from the main building, diverted them to the front door of College Suites, and then to that crosswalk going across NICC Drive. And you'll notice there's no plan here for a sidewalk going west. So, and then I'm just kind of underscoring the idea that it was intended to be across the street.
So you kind of anticipate them coming out of the college and coming out of College Streets, crossing the street, and taking the sidewalk down towards, rather than just straight down.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the plans that College Suites folks had in the works. There's no plan for a sidewalk there. So if it were to be kind of in the future plans of the city, there's going to be kind of this awkward break there before it picks back up again in front of Fairway. So if that kind of helps paint a picture, it seems like it would fit better on the north side of the street. And then to your size question.
I have a question on the sidewalk.
Sure.
I just don't understand sending kids across the street to come back and then cross back across the street to get to Fairway. Makes no sense to me. Why wouldn't you just run them straight down and go to Fairway? So across the street, bring them down, and then cross them back across the street to Fairway.
So they're going across the street twice.
Right.
They're gonna walk across, I mean.
They're probably gonna walk through here, but as long as there's a sidewalk there to use.
Yeah.
To get there.
There's going to be a cow path there. I mean, I think that's the reality.
Is this city property or is this?
That is, yep. So the other part of this conversation is I'm not guiding kind of the overall plan for the city's property. So all I can do is speak, to what the plans were for NICC and College Suites. I agree with you though. It seems to make sense that, sidewalk would be good wherever it is. Anything that gives pedestrian way here.
Well, the other question is you go across the street, cut across, go down to round 2, that's a huge drop off on that side. I mean, I don't really think you can get a sidewalk along there. Cause it kind of goes,
It does slope down.
goes pretty good side. So, I mean,
Yeah.
in my eyes, like Ben said, it wouldn't make sense to cross it twice.
Then let me touch on the size thing really quick. So the height below the sign is 6 feet. That's
So it comes
from
out of the ground pole up
Yeah.
6 foot.
So here's this line here is in gray. You have 6 feet of clearance. So from a any kind of vehicular, I would say any standard vehicle other than a big 18-wheeler, you're going to be able to see below that. And that's a DOT standard. You'll see that, for example, when you leave here tonight, if you go through the roundabout, all of those green kind of DOT signs have that same standard. So that's a tried and tested height there. So there's no concerns from our standpoint on visibility below the sign. The overall size of the sign is simply a function of how much stuff is on their campus and how much stuff we're trying to get people pointed at as they're coming to the campus. That's that guy right there.
This is just a regular metal sign.
Yeah.
On 2 posts.
2 posts. It's standard DOT stuff. That's one thing I wanted to highlight for you folks tonight.
We're not talking some brick thing. It's just
No,
2
it's
posts sign, put in and come out.
Yeah, I would call it a DOT style sign. I was kind of reading back through the ordinance tonight. And to me, so exempt signage is your section 5 of the ordinance, okay? If you want to flip there with me really quick. So if you go to page 240. Okay, well, I'll show you. Item 10 says information sign is defined in section 2.
It's on page 257 of
Okay.
what Kelly sent out.
Oh, we have like 50,
Yeah.
51, 52.
Oh, so they don't have a regulation.
Do you guys have a section that's called exempt signs?
reports.
Yeah, so it jumped out at me in a new way. That really what I feel we're talking about here is an information sign. We're not advertising, we're not making a political case. If you go back to the definition of information signs, section 2, information sign means a sign displayed strictly for direction, safety, or convenience of the public, and which sets forth no advertising. Information signs include signs which identify parking areas and drives, restrooms, addresses, telephone exits and entrances, no trespassing area, danger areas, and similar information. So if I kind of take that broadly, we're just conveying information to people, guests, visitors to college or county, and they need to know where they're going.
Which I understand that. That's, I mean, you go to any college and that's, you know, you see a sign right there where to go. I guess my concern is just the size of it. You know, I mean, you got this huge sign in Fairway Park. I mean, Fairway's land, it's like, if I was I mean, it's just, I wouldn't say eyesore, but it's kind of huge. If I could say that. I've had a couple of suggestions. What if you would put a sign like right before your entrance here to Valley Suites, or right in here? Before they can turn into Valley Suites, and they can still catch it before they come through the roundabout. Or is there any way you could do like in the center island of the roundabout?
That's gonna say,
Or
there's something going in the roundabout, right?
Yeah, so we don't want to detract for sure from the monument side. So that's why I brought this. You can see a little context. That's going to go in the center of that mini traffic circle. Okay. So, you know, we don't want to do anything to deter from that. I hear what you're saying. To be honest, working with the city of Peosta and Dean, we can shift that thing. It's not set in stone where it is. And I think that feedback is important.
I just think if you can do it right here, like right before this entrance, or even on the other side of the entrance, because you're still catching it, and like, you know, because you got these lines here that people could even pull over here for a minute to say, okay, where do I need to go, and then come up and still get their direction. I think that way it's a little bit past. Yeah, it looks like I mean, this is literally.
That's the drive-in. Doing it in your curve in the fairway, you're looking.
Yeah, so you see the drive in the fairways, right?
So then here you're more in your property.
Yeah, so yep, closer for sure. And then this little rectangle here is this building's mini monument.
Oh.
So there's still a little bit of play in that.
So I'm sorry, so I'm here where the signs, like they're thinking, they're thinking a sign would be like.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Currently, it's kind of in this area here. I don't think we have.
This is the entrance.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if that's the right correlate. Somewhere in that area. There's that riprap where the stormwater comes out.
And then the property line there. Is that right?
Yep, right there. It's this.
And then we're using like community
Yeah,
development.
it's kind of right here. So
Somewhere in that.
yep. This is the college suite property now, so that's kind of off limits. But this corner right here.
So College Suites property is also put the sign.
Everything we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't think we can.
Because that's
Probably it would fit in the college
Because it's
suites
all
part of that.
parking lot or whatever.
is that all Disney World?
We have kind of paint markings. on
Thanks,
the road
Gabby.
here. It's in the college suites.
Okay, the entrance people, okay. I see it. Yeah.
And so what this doesn't show is that stormwater feature right here. So that kind of comes down and that curves in here. So, you know, I still think as long as we're not, as long as that light pole doesn't create an obstacle for the sign, I think we do have some latitude to push it closer. Because by that point, you know, you're gonna be slowing down, anticipating the traffic circle anyway. So I think you can scoot it closer
Behind the light pole.
behind the light pole.
towards
Yeah,
the
as long as we're getting it away, and I think even just the dynamic of going, if the light pole's here, you pass it, and your sign is there, I think. Going back to the size, you know, the size is dictated from, again, a DOT standard. So based on a certain speed limit, you want them to be a certain size, so you can easily recognize the sign as you're going by. You know, could it be a little smaller? Like, we might be able to kind of tease the font down a little bit, especially closer because you're starting to slow down more.
My question too is if you would elect to put it like right by that entrance there, could you do like a monument size on the ground and still have it, you know, kind of shorter, I should say, maybe match the sign of the college suites? You know, like a monument style, 5 feet tall.
Yeah, I mean, and my gut is that goes back to the idea of informational signage and DOT signage, and people are accustomed to kind of seeing that type of informational signage. You know, the metal, the easy. I mean, it also goes to cost. The college has to foot the bill for whatever we come up with. The lion's share of the expense is really kind of captured in that monument sign. So I think having a mini monument is probably off the table. Could we, you know, maybe reduce the size of that a bit? I think that's probably reasonable. You know, I'm thinking of a sign in Dubuque as you're kind of going by Finley. You know, they capture quite a bit on that. It's a little bit smaller sign. I think roundabout. So I think, you know, that's something we could look at.
Do we know what the speed limit is going up to?
2025.
Oh, I mean, I would think it's minimal.
Yeah, it's pretty minimal. So I think in my mind, it's starting to get more comparable to that sign, the smaller font.
3, 6. Or fees aside?
Like wondering if the post, what's the, between this post and that post, so you get a sidewalk between it.
Oh. 3.5 feet. So I mean, you do see that on sidewalks. You see a sign going over the top of the post on both sides. So I think that's a reasonable thing. You know, that sidewalks, if there were one going through there, it would probably only be 5 feet.
I would rather see something planned out for sidewalks, just in case they do put it. I'd rather see, like Kirk said, I'd rather see people coming down that same side of the street to go to Fairway.
Yeah, I know you're not for the sidewalk park, but that's a good point, because you're gonna have all these students or families or whatever in these places trying to, you know, go to simple things just right next door, and we know that sidewalks not gonna be far down the road. So just maybe those need to be widened.
So that sign, if you kept that size, you could actually make it a little wider and still accommodate a 5-foot sidewalk.
Maybe the posts go to the edge instead of.
Yep.
in,
And you could also, beef up the one post on one side and just have a cantilever out. I know, I've seen that before. Ideally, we should have 2, and then at that point, going back to the regulations here.
I just think we need to look at the sidewalks down the road, which is a good point.
I agree. I think that I would, if it was mine, I'd put a sidewalk in Fairway.
I don't know if that's.
That's very
easy.
And
What is it, like 7? Line?
Below the sign is 6 feet, and that would be if you weren't walking. The ordinance here on my page 242 in that, I'm not sure what that corresponds to yours, but it talks about the
What's this?
minimum clearance
What's the section number?
section. Special sign regulation, section 9.
Okay.
16 now.
16.
And then if you go scan down to point 2, talks about the clearance below the sign over an access way. And if I'm interpreting that correctly, I'm thinking that means 8 feet if it were over a sidewalk.
So now we're talking a sign over top of a sidewalk. And, you know, most sidewalks, I would say they clean them up with a skid loader anymore, this day and age, so you at least have to have a skid loader, which is what, 5 feet? I'm assuming. So I mean,
Or
tractor with a blade on it.
Well, so we're kind of navigating into kind of a realm that I don't have any control over in terms of future sidewalk planning and that sort of stuff. You know, if there's clear criteria that we can design around, you know, I'm happy to kind of, you know, bend to that within reason. I think what I'm hearing tonight sounds very reasonable. You know, hey, can we look at a slightly smaller sign? Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
And the size of the sign, and because right now it goes up how high up?
Well, just in this drawing, it's 6 feet. So I'm
have to
6
go up-
feet, so
You'd have to
that's,
go up 2 more feet.
you go up 2 more feet, and I'm thinking that's for somebody who's going along on a bike, you know, underneath that.
So then I size wise, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say that. You're 2 feet higher up now.
You didn't get your sign above that yet, so you're at another 6 feet above that. So you're pushing 15 feet, 14 feet. I mean, that's,
It wouldn't cause an issue for cars or anything.
No.
Seeing or anything.
Yeah, definitely not a sideline thing. And the nature of these signs is really to kind of blend into the background.
yeah, and is, no, so is a sign over a sidewalk aesthetically, is that a negative, I guess, is, you know, and
There's
that's,
signs like that. There's signs like that all over the place. I mean,
Is there?
they're kind of goofy, but what do you do when you have a tight little space you got to work with, and you still got to communicate stuff?
Guy wires that come off poles over sidewalks.
I walk under signs downtown. No one's on the sign.
Yep.
I guess the biggest thing was somebody with this pedal bike, you know, hit their head on it.
Yeah, and I think that's what drives that issue. Yeah.
That sounds good.
So most kids will probably have a bike at college.
I would think.
But I think it's reasonable too to be thinking about a sidewalk.
Probably coming down the pipeline, I'm assuming.
At some point it could.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm thinking, you know, master planning for Peosta, it seems like a good idea to have.
Yes.
And I think too, like the placement, if we move further down, you know, away behind the fairway, I think. Sorry, less of, that this is clearly, I don't know, I like the idea of moving it that way, it's not like a fairway or, you know, if you're visually you're pushing it past, okay, now you've entered into an ICC stuff. Whether college, you know what I mean, like just visually, that makes sense. Okay, you're slowing down, you're prepared to go wherever you need to go.
Can I just ask, the main issue was it Fairway that said this is to Peosta entrance? Is that what? they're
No,
calling
it just because it's off the property.
Just that it's not on NICC, so it just
Right.
says, but there is an easement here that the city can say, yep, we're gonna
Yep,
put
city
informational
property.
sign there. Okay, so
City
it's not that somebody had a
So I
problem,
don't-
something leading up to it.
Fairway, probably don't even know.
Okay. I was just
They
curious if there
They
was-
don't need to know, but I mean.
I just
they-
didn't
they
know
may.
if there was,
Yeah, and that's just the nature of these that I'm not
yeah,
sure.
no, I was just curious how this came about, yeah.
Is it something, this is just a question, I have no idea, is it something that if they did do a sidewalk along here, that they can move this sign on this side of the sidewalk, or is that too far away?
Yeah, these are just gonna be your standard 2.5-inch square galvanized posts, you know, holes in them.
It's just a cheap sign.
Cheap sign.
It can come out and be replaced and.
Yep, in fact, there's kind of a safety base, I'm not using the right term, but if you were to hit it, it'll breakaway base.
It's a breakaway, yeah.
So, you know, loosen the bolts, put a new foundation, shift it over, you're
Well,
done.
that's what I'm thinking, if they're cleaning it with this, blade or skid steer or something, they would happen to hit it. You know, if it was over the sidewalks, that way I was wondering if they put the sidewalk in someday, that they can move this sign this way,
Yeah.
you know, put it there maybe
Yeah,
instead.
and as long as it works with the grade, because I know there's quite a bit going on with that. So I think, you know, we're-
Yeah, I know there's a sewer.
Like,
Sewer or something there.
you know, and that's another, you know, I like your forward thinking about the skid steer. I don't know how the city currently clears sidewalks. I mean, do they do
I'm
a
sorry?
skid steer?
Do they clean the sidewalks once in a while, the skid steer, city?
I would believe,
Yeah,
yes.
because I see them sometimes up here doing. when
The
they're
other thing you
doing
need to remember is, though that might be city property, I want to say that Fairway maintains that. So we need to probably be considerate to the fact if they're maintaining the city property.
So now we got another obstacle.
Yeah, to move.
I'm just presenting. We
Yeah.
want to be neighborly
Yeah,
in whatever we're doing.
yeah, you don't want to
And-
just throw it in there and say,
For sure, in
Correct.
Fairway,
Correct,
they're a good neighbor.
Yeah.
they are.
When we went through this process here, they were gracious enough to let us put materials on their property and, you know, drive tractors.
That was
across.
that was why my question came up of how this came about. Was
Yeah.
it something that we're trying to make them happy with what, you know?
Yeah.
The concept of.
Yeah, my guess is they don't care, but I mean, however the city wants to approach that, I think is reasonable. Anything else in that I'm not?
The distance in between signs, I think, needs to be addressed.
Yeah, can you just touch on that one for me quick?
Well, it's brought to my attention that there's more than one sign there that's not within that, within that 150-foot distance.
All these signs.
Right.
Yeah, so I think if you take, no, not those signs, I'm sorry, go back to your, those will be there too, yeah. Your standard kind of, you know, cautionary sign. If you go back to that, 11 by 17. Yeah, that I'm talking about. So you come in down in ICC Drive, so that we have the main sign we've been talking about. Then as you enter the roundabout, sign E and C are all kind of repeating where you need to turn for that particular building. So this one, for example, sign E is pointing us to childcare and industrial technology. So instead of going straight down ICC Drive, this way, what we're trying to get people to do is use the roundabout for its.
I don't even know how you need a roundabout.
So you enter and you exit right away and you come this way. If you're going to ECAS or gas utility ECAS, you're gonna come around this way. And ideally, the sign C is gonna repeat these names. Ideally, you come this way and you're right at. You're not gonna go straight through and come, you know, so we're trying to kind of cut down the traffic at this intersection.
It's the same thing that our roundabout does. The
So
existing
I think
roundabout.
so these signs here are kind of within that.
So we've already broken it
150
down.
foot.
So there's a rule, they're not supposed to be.
So it's a
Part,
We've already
frankly,
broken our
part of what we're dealing with tonight is kind of
distance between.
dealt with.
Separation of 100
So I think we're kind of testing the
Signs on
ordinance. And I think we're seeing some of that stuff. On your property anyways. They are.
It's NICC.
Us.
What's NICC?
That,
It's just straight.
I think my understanding is that it's permitted regardless.
So.
And that, is that what, am I saying that right?
I was listening a little bit because we were talking about the existing roundabout that we have now. And I mean, we're going against what we say again.
Yeah, there's a ton of stuff in
Yeah.
that one that we're simply duplicating. So there's nothing new, you know, in my thinking with that.
Well, but to the point, if this is BCC's property,
These signs need to be so far away from one another.
According to our ordinance, yes, 150 feet.
If they're on their property, they have to too.
It doesn't identify that in the ordinance.
It wasn't clear to me either, and I read it again, the very next one, minimum distance between signs. All ground signs in the districts in which they are allowed shall have a minimum distance separation of 150 feet. So it's almost too vague to be helpful.
You just need 150 feet from that side.
Yeah, and to give you kind of like a relative distance, this one, E to the property line is 110 feet. So there's 110 feet from this side to the property line, which is right here. So
You wouldn't be on the out, you wouldn't be on the other side of the thing, or you'd still have to be on. You'd still have to be on this side, you wouldn't be on.
No, you still have to be in the.
Over here.
So all of, these signs, in my mind, the setback distance should be the guiding criteria, not the separation between the signs. So for example, sign B, which is this guy here, sign B and C, those are all really sizable setbacks. So B is 238 feet, C is 200 feet, and then E is 110 feet.
We don't care about those.
It doesn't seem like, yeah,
All we're hearing, all we're worried about.
sign
is
it, sign it. That one there makes total sense. Here we come, NICC, and we're asking to put a sign on the city easement, makes perfect sense. The rest of it was hard for me to kind of get my head around. Why that makes this ordinance. But, obviously, we're happy to go through this.
The 150-foot thing just preventing a whole bunch of signs. being
Right,
thrown all
it's
over.
preventing it from
Yeah.
clustering, is what it's doing.
I think see if the sidewalks are going on.
Well, we have something identified in our comprehensive plan that states that we want to be within a quarter of a mile of school. So there again, that's so close to the college that I think it's important to reserve that for sidewalk.
To think there's gonna be a sidewalk there.
Absolutely.
Makes sense. Although at the end of the day, I'll like come back to the fact that this is just a sign in. If it doesn't work, you can take it out, put a different one in, because this is just a cheap.
Because I think it's like, I don't know what's the sign. So to your point, is the sidewalk right behind the curb? Is it 3 feet off the curb? Is it hugging the edge of the easement between curb and fairway? So I don't know where it is. First of all, the width of it, you may upgrade to a bigger grade of skid steer that has a bigger shovel or a bucket that may not fit within a 5-foot space. So I think that's a great point. This isn't that permanent monument feature that people are going to be, oohing and ahhing over. It's going to be just simple information, just to get people from point A to point B. That said, coordinating with Dean makes perfect sense. If we look at making it smaller, if it's close to the circle, I think absolutely now we cut a little bit across that as well.
We are making a decision today based
I'd like
for future, for
yeah.
future requests. So
Yeah, and I came before the city council too, and I think there's enough of a gray area there that they wanted to come to this body, which I can appreciate. So hopefully we can come away with the solution, or at least an idea that I can take back.
And there's no issue with then later the city moving where that sign is at. So they put it in and then later we say, oh, we're gonna put a sidewalk there, let's.
I think as long as we know where the sidewalk's gonna go, I think we'll be fine.
But as long as,
When I know NICC will go right along with it, there's.
Yeah.
as long as, yeah, because then I see what that's. Pretty safe inside the city. To move it properly.
Yeah. I don't know, like, I don't think that would be a
Yeah.
problem. I can't speak.
I would
for
think
it.
NICC.
You're not looking at a very costly sign there.
Now for that,
What I would like to do though, is if we think it's gonna happen, like we said, I would gladly, move these posts out. And if, try to accommodate a certain number of feet. I just need to be told what that is.
Do we have any width on like the, the whole, can't think of the name of it right now, the water.
Water's Edge.
Yeah, that has all really specific sidewalks.
Right, for recreational trails, pedestrian trails, so
Yeah.
they're all varying in different
Oh,
sizes.
so it doesn't.
So this
there's no
would be,
kind of-
I think this would be 4-foot traffic, bicycles.
Yes, we have to be careful because it starts to be like, if you're envisioning, two bicyclists coming out in corrections, we start to get to a 6-foot
yeah.
wider sidewalk. And I don't feel like that's what we're talking about here. But maybe Dean would be a good person to say, what's the equipment width? So Dean might be able to help kind of drive some of these specific questions.
So, do you know what size this center? What do they call this?
The island,
Island?
yeah.
Do you know what size that is?
We're down in the 4-foot width right here at the skate park. If you look at these stalls, these parking stalls, that's 9 feet. So if you kind of look at a relative dimension, we're half that, I'm thinking. So probably 4 feet for the skinny part, and it probably flares out to 12 feet at the wide part there.
So this is just another question or suggestion maybe. If we're thinking about putting the sidewalk someday along this side, could we get rid of this crossover thing and maybe put the sign right there? But the monument's way back here though.
Yeah, so we're talking 40 feet or so. I mean,
I'm just
yeah.
trying to throw different
Prefer
ideas
not
out.
to visually distract from
Center
that.
attention.
Because when you're driving, you want guests and visitors and students and parents and so forth to be looking at that monument sign and not obstructing with that. Even it's gonna be too spindly, legs going up or posts going up, I still think that's kind of a distraction. Yeah.
And it's on E. We got two signs, like pretty much. Yeah, that, well, I don't know, that would just be like.
They're gonna have all kinds of signs close together.
Yeah, and we're bombarding, people with a lot of information, but, some of these things are so second nature.
I guess I'm just really questioning the idea of having a sign straddle a sidewalk. I mean, if there's any way to push it to the south. I have a hard time imagining somebody's going walking under a, and they will, I mean, but it's just aesthetically, is that the idea?
Okay, I got one more question. Why couldn't you take this sign, get rid of E, put this sign where E is? Childcare and industrial, you got childcare telling you to go that way, and you got industrial telling you to go that way. So, I mean, just something to throw out there, you get rid of E and put that guy right there. And then,
Why is industrial, I guess. Should be conceived.
IT is that,
Okay.
yeah. So
Like IT, okay.
So from the college's standpoint, kind of like their nomenclature is the IT building. Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
I like Ben's idea.
and then,
And are you Ben? Because I'm Ben too. Okay.
and then,
I was like, thank you.
I think and then you put that sign there, it takes us even out of the equation altogether.
Okay,
So
so,
not looking at us at all.
okay, so the board's thinking through this signage is kind of, there's kind of layers of information. Layer one is, a parent or a student would come, they'd see the sign, and that would give them the first sense of where they're going. Then the roundabout, the smaller signs, these guys are a clarification of that first layer of information. So I think that's the goal with the two different signs. I'm not sure they'd accept kind of combining those, because then it puts a whole bunch of information right on that roundabout as you're getting. So it's kind of, let's get them thinking about it here, and let's clarify their thinking here, once they know which way to go. And then actually one layer that we're not even talking about tonight are individual signs at each building. So that's the third layer. So now you've identified that you've arrived.
I don't know where to go here. Do we, I mean, you talk,
That's what
you
he's
say,
talking about.
what the sign is,
Do that.
it's a bell sign, you know, are we looking at sidewalks? Do we make a decision tonight?
Definitely gotta make provisions for sidewalks, so I think that's a must.
I mean, you take and you look here, say this sign's going here, let's measure back 150 feet, see how far we can push that sign up there. So that's, I mean, I'd measure 150 feet, see how far you can push that sign up. And I see about the sidewalks.
If I could suggest something, 150 feet is kind of dark.
It's not very far.
If you could work with Dean to say, let's pick something here, that's as close to the campus as possible. It works with the grade, the storm situation, the easement line, the sidewalk. I mean, I think those are all reasonable things Dean can tell me. And I'm happy to work with him on that. What this body's not gonna know until we have that conversation is where the sidewalk goes. So I think, Matt, how does that work? Can this group enable Dean to kind of work with me on that? So we're not coming back a second time
I think we're still gonna have to meet again.
as this body or as the city council?
Well, we can take it to city council once we get a definite answer from here. But I don't know how they've handled it. Well, you guys haven't handled it in the past because you haven't met. So I guess I wouldn't have a problem if you worked with Dean and we could finalize it and then we could make the recommendation to the council.
Okay,
That way?
because I think, the description we're getting here
Sure.
gives me enough to go by. And I know it's an official body, so I mean, is that something, could you share the result of, that's kind of public information.
Well, it's their decision. I mean, it's final. I mean, you can make an appeal to the council on that, but it's ultimately up to this group.
Could this group make a motion and include
Contingent
the 4 or
upon,
5 points that we've talked about? And
I think that the council would be open to that. Again,
Okay.
it's ultimately your decision on how you want to handle this, so. But yeah, I think that doing the contingency would be fine.
So make a motion that includes, the stipulation of the sidewalk, the stipulation of the easement, locating as close to NSCC as possible. Is the size part of that? I mean, do we want to look at the smaller one?
Me personally, I think yes.
I just think it's too big.
With the size component, could you do 2 signs, one on top and one on the bottom?
Well, it's broken into 2 right now. So it's NSCC Peosta campus, and then there's a space, and then there's the buildings.
And then if you put it over a sidewalk, you gotta be 8 feet, and then the sign is, is it 6 foot high? 5 foot high, so 8.
Right.
When you're looking up. Actually, the size out. I mean, are you concerned with the size out or the size up?
I don't know, it just looks huge to me, but maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me.
This is a case, and I'm guilty of this too. This is a case where we're focused on this sign. You will drive down the highway, and you'll start to think, and you'll start to see these signs. They're ginormous, but we just see them every day.
So
No,
you
I keep
put
thinking I
these-
need to drive around and look at signs now.
So it's just this size,
Give you the size of 2 of these tables. About.
height-wise. But bear in mind, you're driving 25 miles an hour by them. They're 20 feet away. Yeah, I'm trying to look at that board right there. By the tape measure, it's probably a notch taller than that, about that.
I've got one on my.
Brought out. But it helps to visualize,
Yeah.
but we, yeah, we're kind of narrowed in on that.
But what about the TV? What about the size of that? That's pretty large. It's gonna be, maybe a little wide, I don't know.
Yeah, so if you look at, so as it stands right now, we're saying 6 feet.
That's where it starts.
That's the bottom, the current drawings. If we were to put it above a sidewalk, I can just barely touch 8 feet. So where that black band starts, that would be your 8-foot sign.
Right, a little over 6 foot.
But that-
So the top of it would probably be up to the corrugated steel.
At that speed, that close to the side, that just seems way too high. I think you need to look at pushing a sidewalk closer in the sign that way if you can, or accounting for that, because a sign that high when you're driving that slow, that close to, it's different on a highway when you're, I don't know,
Yeah.
it just seems really high,
So
you're trying to go underneath
You have
it.
to look at, because if you're up 8 foot and then you're going up even higher. how-
Right.
That's why I wonder, if you put the sidewalk and then you put it
Mhm.
on the side, that way
Right.
maybe it's over here, you're not right here.
I think that's the best case scenario. You want to keep it away from the sidewalk. Any potential sidewalk in the future and
Saves reading.
And you eliminate
Yeah.
doing this.
That's, I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
does anybody see any other potential spots they could put it? I mean,
that's for, I'm sure you guys have done your work to find it.
especially if it's gonna be that side, I don't see any other.
Yeah, I mean, you really have the roundabout down here. So as you're driving north, you see on the big concrete base, you see Northwest Iowa College. So you're going in the right direction. So we're really limited between that point and that point.
Does the 150 feet have to do with these directions, like the yield and those signs? Does it have to be 150 feet away from one of these? Or is that just
No,
informational
I
sign
think-
difference?
Yeah.
So if it was close to that, it would.
That'd be another potential.
Yeah, and I don't know the lay of the land, so I can't even picture like, oh, we'll just push it this way, 15 feet, and then we'll have this one.
That's why I think
Yeah.
like
Storms were right there.
the motion would say, move it as close to NICC as possible, then enabling Dean to kind of work, to locate that. So trying to be as specific as possible in the motion, and giving Dean the ability to kind of land on that.
This is actual aerial footage, right? You got a tree and a tree, here's your storm drain. I don't see any ground equipment somewhere over.
Well, that's where College Suites is.
You got all the driveway.
So all of that site work, and you can't visualize it yet, 'cause it's not on there yet, and the site, they're not even doing parking lot stuff,
But on the other side of that light pole is basically gonna be cement driveway, right, and parking for College Street, so there's.
no, there's a little bit of room here. Cause that is pretty darn close, that black dot there is pretty close.
So here's a picture. I took a picture
Oh,
tonight.
yeah, I know, I drove that way and I thought I should.
So here's the light pole.
Okay.
and then The driveway is right here. So, and then there's, right down here, there's a storm sewer.
Okay.
So I mean, I was thinking if they pushed it, like, I don't know, maybe up in here somewhere, they do a potential sidewalk. Sidewalk.
This is gonna be a practice session. Is that, anyway.
So that's, the original plan was kind of put it way back here. I don't think.
So, and I mean, if we just did it like halfway in between here, where they push it out that way and the lay the land is a little bit better? Or we're still trying to not, like, Fairway's got a lot of landscaping that we're trying to avoid there. They got
There's
like-
not a whole lot of room.
Not much room.
Yeah, there's
Landscape.
Not a huge easement,
Okay.
No.
so
So put
we're
that there.
kind of limited in how far we can push that
Yeah.
over.
So yeah, I think that only leaves us really by pushing this part of the.
Still probably. Fairway property, right? The edge of it. This is the storm sewer here. This is College Suites, I don't know where that drive is,
It would, well, we would be keeping it in that easement.
in the easement, so they kind of,
Well, you can't put it on their property, but the easement between, their property and the back of the curb, so in that easement.
Know that a sidewalk that a sign would fit to the south of sidewalk potential and not encroach their property? Well, we don't know any of that.
I don't know.
No,
I'm actually doubtful that there's enough room for the sign we're talking about and the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So I think we're either talking about, a single mast with a sign hanging out over the sidewalk, or a double mast that's wide enough to allow a sidewalk to go between.
I don't know what the easement is, how far.
I believe we can go by this document here, and so that dark line is the property line. I believe that's the easement for NICC drive. And I'd need to verify that. I think 66 feet, does that ring a bell? And so if we, 12 plus the difference here, that's graphically what that looks like.
Ben, we do have a few that are 50.
Pardon?
We do have a few right-of-ways that are 50.
Okay, so the way, so our civil engineer for this project came up with this line work. And that to me graphically looks like it's the wider one.
Okay.
Because that would be 48 feet. And then we're saying there would be 2 feet and there's clearly more than that. So I'm thinking that's a 66-foot right of way. So I think it's a question of how wide we can get this thing to accommodate a sidewalk going underneath it. And then how tall it wants to be.
I'd get with the and see if there's, my opinion is this is just a cheap sign. I put it in and worry about down the road. Because the sign can come out, it's like putting 2 fence posts in and put a bolt to it.
It's just a matter of who's paying for it the next.
Right.
Doing it again.
But I would think, I'd get with
I think
either somebody or just get a plan for a sidewalk.
Just one more thought. Can you take this bottom chunk and just make it wider? And, instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, do 4 and 4, and then you have this wider sign, or is that too wide for however you design it? Does that seem too wide? Then you can account for, if you have to go up higher and it's wide enough, you put a sidewalk under it, that kind of, you're just changing all of your 4 pieces of information here with directional, 4 pieces, it's just right next to it with space in between, you know what I mean? You're just changing the layout of the sign to account for width and not quite so high if you gotta go up higher for a sidewalk. Your engineering standpoint.
Well, I mean, I follow what you're saying. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen it that way, because normally
It's easier to read going straight down.
going straight down, you wanna present the information, so it the second I have to kind of recognize this grouping with this little arrow, then another grouping next to it.
Yeah. just trying to solve it.
Yeah, no, I like where you're going with that. I like where you're going with that.
I get, it looks nicer, like that, but just a thought.
I have a question regarding this yield sign. What kind of talking about, I think, right? This is kind of sweet. So when we talk about pushing up against this, is there some sort of would that be obstructing view of the yield sign or?
Yeah, no, I think this is kind of a general roadmap for these signs.
Okay, I didn't know if that was.
No, that's a fair question. There's no.
You'd be 8 foot and this would be.
Right.
So I think what we'll do, this hasn't been introduced to the contractor yet. I need to get approval here, to get approval of the city before I take this to the contractor and say, how are we gonna modify our current plan? So they've got to put together a price and so forth, and we get that in front of NICC.
Ben, their decision whatever the decision they make, it goes to the board. The board really, or the council, they really don't have, they can't say we don't like it or we like it. It's ultimately up to this group.
Yeah, so this then will impact that.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to just look, that makes sense.
So do we want to meet with Dean and get his opinion on everything before we approve it? Or-
Yeah, I've taken some notes, we talked about a single mast, a double mast, where the proposed sidewalk is gonna go, what that easement is through there. So I think once we get that clarification, then you can make a decision.
Because I would like to know, yeah, is there even enough room for a double mast? And I still have, question, is that really something we want to start because if it's something we allow, the gates are open.
Precedent.
We're really testing the waters right now.
That's the other thing, just kind of keeps coming back to the idea that this is kind of boilerplate, and this is a specific case, it's gonna set a precedent.
Once we set this, anybody can be like, well, they did it, they did it.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, planning and zoning is gonna be taking this on. So to review it, and I've even reached, the gentleman that's doing the tap room sign, he said that he would lend his experience to help write the sign ordinance and incorporate it into the zoning. So if that kind of makes you feel a little bit better, it's not always gonna be like this, it will change. And the decision that you make can always, you can go back and say it's grandfathered in because it was under this, specific ordinance or zoning. So I hope that makes you feel a little bit better about it.
I also go back and do the other option, get rid of that, see if you can get rid of that, whatever one is.
Oh, sure. Did you want,
I mean, that would be.
that's an extra copy that Kelly made.
If that's
I'll just trade.
something to look at, then we don't have to be involved. We don't have to make a decision. Just,
That's not a
I
bad.
mean, worst case scenario, you miss it, you just go around with it.
yeah, you go around a circle and look at it again. But yeah, if you take, we move that sign A to where, whatever, is it B? I can't read the small one.
I tried to enlarge it and I apologize up here and it's still.
I still have my
If you
7
take
down.
sign A and put it where E is, that alleviates everything, and you're done. You don't have to come to us, you don't have to go to the council, nothing. It's something to bring back home, to think about.
Right in front of the couch.
You definitely get rid of this sign, you just move that sign right.
It's done.
It's done. You don't have to worry about sidewalk, you don't have to worry about moving it here and there, up, down, left, right. Making your sign
As well as
smaller.
that e-sign is just the two NIC, the daycare and
Yeah, I mean, I totally appreciate that.
the layering.
It's the layering that the code is very explicit on.
Something to think about.
We have this kind of conversation, many times over in that design process. I do like that.
There we go.
Settle up. Just,
So we're just, essentially, sign A as far east as possible.
Right next to that.
Far.
So and then I'm gonna ask it one more time. So we feel that this group has to meet with Dean?
Yeah, I think that
Or-
between Rudy and I, we can talk to Dean about it and then we can just convey to the rest of the group the answers to those questions.
Okay, and then we don't need to meet this group?
No, we'll just we'll just let the council know what was decided.
Perfect, okay, and then you'll feed me that information.
Bet.
I can modify this.
Yep.
And then to the council, I'll present. kind
You
of-
don't have to present anything to them.
Oh, beautiful.
I mean, this is the last.
Okay, that's the part I was missing. This is it, okay.
I do have one more suggestion that might help.
Uh-huh.
What about taking this sign here and moving him up a little bit? Taking this sign, I don't know what these are here. Can you put it in the middle right there?
In the median, yeah, I mean, that is possible.
And then you could put that sign there. You're double.
Yeah.
Because if you put a sign right there, those arrows are pointing right there, go that way.
So Ben, are you saying the sign, another sign in here?
No, you take sign E right there and you put it right there.
Right there.
Right in the middle.
Oh, here,
And now it takes sign A and put it closer.
Put it right where that
sign
is.
where A, where
And then
he
you take
is.
that other sign and you
Yeah,
move it down
these two.
closer to the college. So then you're not, you got your 150. I'm trying to help you.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And keep your double.
Would that be 150 foot then? Should be, shouldn't it?
But, well, it makes it kind of closer.
You'd have to move that sign
Yeah.
B down. Is that what it is? Sign B? You'd have to move it down towards the college a little bit more.
What's that decent thing?
It gets you going toward.
Main building.
Yeah. So it kind of follows that, when you guys leave here tonight, if you go to the roundabout, it follows that same idea of the little green sign that kind of gets you in the right direction. But, okay, well,
That would work.
I think you've taken your notes. We'll get, Dean and stuff and
Maybe we need it maybe
keep me
tomorrow.
posted.
Yeah, just give me a holler.
You want to let me know when you guys are
Yep,
done?
absolutely. Yep.
And you could, if you want to keep that one there, as for Mary. If you took and you move sign A to E, and then you took that guy, you put him right here. But we're still able to do that one there, even though it's less than 100 foot, 150 foot. I figured that one,
You said
for that.
10 foot, right?
Off the setback.
There's mud now? There's mud?
Clear as my notes are.
We done?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, guys.
This is our first meeting.
There's almost a second.
Thanks for making it great.
Wow, what a privilege.